Hey, happy October. It is time for the Homestead Huddle, where we jump into all the things farming and homesteading and gardening. Whether you're a small backyard gardener or you have larger homestead with animals and livestock and poultry, hopefully there's some good gold nuggets that you can grab a hold of from this monthly podcast, this monthly huddle that we have, where we just dive into all of the stuff. So this is about a 45-minute session. The way that this will be structured, in case you are new, is I'll first tackle the top 3 things in your growing zone that you can be focusing on. Now, granted, at permaculturefx.com, every single month, I always put in a gardening calendar that has what to do in the greenhouse with poultry, options for kids, things in the garden, food forest. You know, we have a really long, extensive list. And then in Patreon, there's a printed version of that, even for the free members in Patreon. However, I think sometimes, honestly, life just gets in the way. And fall is so busy. Kids are back to school. Everybody's trying to get last minute things done before the crazy holiday season begins. So I feel like October is like go time in a lot of different climates. And we have to be really careful to get the things done that are the most important. So what we'll do first is we'll jump into the top 3 things per growing zone. If you can only do these 3 things, here are the 3 that I would cover. And then we'll jump into Q&A. Now, if this is your first time here or you're unfamiliar with this, the Q&A basically come from our Patreon community, patreon.com/permaculturefx, where those are real farmers, gardeners, homesteaders, food foresters, permacultures, and dirt ninjas from all over the world, quite actually, that are asking questions about what they should be or could be doing in their growing zone. So these questions are coming real time from real people that are actually doing it in their yards, on their properties. So hopefully, regardless of whatever property size you may have, there's going to be some things in here that I think will be really helpful for you. So here we go. If you are in USDA zones 3 through 8, there are 3 things that I would highly recommend that you do this month. Even if you can't get to anything else, these 3 things are the ones that I would personally be jumping into. Now, I lived in Michigan when I was a young adult. I was in Kansas City for 17 years, so I get cold. You know, being up in northern Michigan, you know, we would measure our snow in feet, really, not in inches. You know, the ice was, you know, so thick. So things that I don't have to worry about now that I live in Florida, but I am very, very familiar with the cold climate growing zones and what it's like to farm, to garden, to have animals, livestock, and poultry in those growing climates. So if you're in those zones, the first thing that I would be doing right now is covering my soil. So you've just finished or are almost done with the peak annual gardening season. Things are slowly starting to wind down. Now, maybe some of you are still harvesting, you know, maybe some brassicas. So some cabbage, some broccoli, some radishes, turnips, Swiss chard, that sort of thing. But tomatoes are starting to wind down a little bit. You're canning things up. Eggplants are kind of done or almost done. And to be honest, I was looking the other day in Michigan, you guys have peak leaf season in the next like week or 2 weeks. So it is upon us. So what that means is cover your soil. So we don't want to have any bare soil over the winter months. So it protects the roots of our fruit trees, of our berry bushes, of our nut trees, but also in our annual gardens, it's really going to protect that microbiome. So we want to protect the probiotics and the enzymatic action that's taking place in the soil, protect those microbes. So just cover it up with whatever you got. I mean, it could be chopped up leaves that you bagged up with your push mower or your bagging mower, and you're just laying that over the perennial flower beds or the annual garden beds. Maybe in the food forest, it is wood chips, but it could be chop and drop too, and that is absolutely okay. But definitely cover your soil. The second thing that I would be doing is a fall probiotic application in the trees and the annual vegetable gardens as well. Because really those tree roots, they're active over the winter. They are still sending out, you know, new roots. Now there's no top growth, you know, your maple trees or your hazelnuts or your chestnuts, they're not growing up top over the winter, but the roots are still active. And so that's where we want that powerful microbial and probiotic life is in the soil. I personally use BioEgg by SCD Probiotics. There's a link for that at permaculturefx.com and just click products. But that's what I've used for 20 plus years. And I absolutely love it because it's a lot of different strains of probiotics that are all grown together in one liquid mother culture. So you're not getting a separate strain of different lactobacillus or whatever. You're getting them all grown together. What I like about that is whatever ones are going to thrive in your soil, they're going to thrive. The ones that are not, they're just going to die off, So there's enough variety in those strains that you're going to have something that's going to work well in your soil. So I would be adding that to the soil, adding it to your mulch as you're covering it up, and then you're going to be good to go. The third thing that I would focus on in USDA zones 3 through 8 is, depending on what your livestock and poultry schedule is, I usually do fall livestock and poultry deworming. Now, I don't typically use a synthetic version. I use Basic H, the original formula that comes in a 5-gallon bucket or a 30-gallon drum. Basic H2 doesn't work as well. It is still effective, but I really, really prefer the original formula of Basic H. So I do my fall deworming, and usually 1 week after I deworm, I give them their probiotics as well. So Bio Livestock or the equine version by SCD Probiotics are my personal probiotics of choice. So those are the 3 things that I would be focusing on in the month of October. If you're in USDA zones 3 through 8, cover your soil, fall probiotic application, and the fall livestock deworming and giving them their microbes back in their guts. So hopefully that's helpful. So if you are in USDA zones 9 through 11, our tasks are a little bit more unique. So whether you're in Southern California or Florida or North Texas, the tasks that we have in the garden are kind of twofold. We're wrapping up our food forest season, but we're also amping up our annual vegetable season. So there's kind of this balance. I feel like when I lived in Kansas City and in Michigan, we had like a sprint, you know what I mean? So it was like spring and summer and early fall. We are running hard. We're growing everything. The food forest, we're doing the annuals, we're doing the perennials, we're doing the herbs, everything all at once. Now, in the warmer climates, it's a marathon pace. You know what I mean? Like, we're not doing everything pretty much all at once. So we've really got to just pace ourselves. So we're slowing down in the food forest. We're ramping up in the vegetable garden. I'm going to take a drink of this tea. So the 3 things that I would be doing to help keep that balance would be, number 1, in the food forest, start wood chipping and mulching to get ready for the winter. Now, if you're in USDA zones 9 or even 10A, 8B even, we can get pretty hefty cold snaps. And so I don't want my roots to be affected. Now, if I lose some leaves, that's fine, whatever. But I want my roots to really be protected. I want the microbial life to be protected. So this is a great time of year to start getting those wood chips. Now, practically in Florida, it's like hurricane season. Like, we're kind of 3/4 of the way through, hurricane season, and it's been a good year so far, knock on wood. However, what it usually means is people are doing tree work. So it's a lot easier to sign up on chipdrop.com or drive by a local tree service company that's already chipping anyway and say, hey, I'll give you $50 cash if you bring that over to my house and drop it, in a spot. And usually they'll be willing to do it, especially if you just say cash. Sometimes people don't have great luck on chip drop, which I get. You're in a more remote area, but just drive up to those truck drivers when they're doing work on the side of the road, and usually they're willing to help you out. The second thing that I would start doing is, this is the ideal time for composting because it is wet, it's rainy season. It's still super hot. There's a lot of turnover in those nutrients. Things are going to compost a lot faster now. Plus, when you're composting, it's a great time to do foliar sprays. So if you're wanting a deep dive in those, there's a PDF in Patreon on composting methods and foliar sprays that gives you a write-up of some of the different things and ways that I compost, but also my recipes for a basic foliar spray and my recipes for I'm a dirt ninja, I want to do everything foliar spray. So there's a PDF there. There's also 2 classes. One of them is on vermicomposting, which is worm composting. And then another class on the 18-day Berkeley method, which is like hot composting, where you literally take a pile of compost of raw ingredients and you turn it like every day, every couple days, and you literally get compost in 18 days like clockwork. And so there's a video on how to do that and just, turning it over. So great time to do composting, great time to do foliar sprays, get those worm bins going and ready for the winter. My worm bin personally is from Worm Nerds and they are online. I don't make any money from that, just so you know. The third thing that I would do is continue your annual vegetable starts and annual vegetable gardening. And you can amend right now probably with bone meal, because bone meal's got nitrogen and phosphorus in it, which is going to help with the green growth and starting to put flowers on things like the tomatoes and other nightshades. Very much less on the potassium level, which we don't want. That's more for our fruit set. So bone meal is probably what I would be adding, and always compost. Always compost. Really be careful of where you get your compost. Even if you get it from a local farmer, they could be growing their hay or their straw using Grazon, which is the most ridiculous thing on the face of the earth. I'm not going to get into that. That's a whole bunny trail. Save that for a podcast with David, obsessed with plants. Which, by the way, if you haven't tuned in, Dave and I started a podcast. We wanted a place to ramble and give the longer form stuff. So that is there if you're available or if you're interested in that. So the third thing again is starting those annual vegetables, getting them in the ground. But this also includes pastures. So if you're doing horses or cattle, sheep or goats, this is the time of year when I'm doing clover, I'm planting alfalfa seed, I'm doing purple top turnips, I'm doing daikon radish, I'm doing, what did I do today? Oh, annual rye grass. So there's a lot of things you can be broadcasting just for fun. I even throw in some sunflower seeds and millet and milo and sorghum. I actually cheat on those. I use the bagged birdseed mix from TSC, and I just throw that in as a filler, because then you get some sunflowers, you get some fun millet and sorghum. And honestly, I have so many dang peacocks. I just need something for them to be able to eat. So those are really fun for them. So when you are doing your annual vegetables, also be thinking of pastures and some of those annual crops that are super cold hardy out in the pastures for the winter. So again, zones 9 through 11 are 3 things really fast. Are start wood chipping in the food forest, the ideal time for composting and doing foliar sprays, both in the garden and in the food forest. And then the third thing is doing your annual vegetable starts, both in the raised beds or in the ground in the annual vegetable gardens, but also in your pastures. So hopefully those 3 things are helpful for those that are in USDA zones 9 through 11. Okay, now it is time to jump into the questions, the Q&A. So these are 12 questions that we've got, I think, this month that are coming from real homesteaders, real food foresters that are just thinking through, what do I need to be doing this month? And so the reason why I like this is it's kind of like a little bit of a invisible roundtable discussion. Like in my mind, I'm picturing everybody sitting around, a table, and we're going through some of this together. And I know there's some of you that actually use these homestead huddles in this way, that you're either watching it as a family going, all right, let's sit down with Chris and really nerd out with our coffee or our tea or whatever and talk about what we need to be doing this month. Some of you even sit down with your staff and your farm staff and your farm hands and go, all right, here's what we need to be thinking about this month. And I think that's a phenomenal way to do it. But even if you're just listening to this out in the yard, you're just listening to it here on YouTube or wherever and just listening to it as you're mowing or you're on the tractor, great. So these are the 12 questions. We're gonna jump into these. I will list those in the description if you need to fast forward or whatever, so. All right, number 1. Where did it go? Number 1, should we pick off the first fruit the first year from a new fruit tree? And what fruit trees do we need to pick off the fruit year? Is it all of them or just some? So in general, the reason why we pick off the fruit the first calendar year from any fruit tree, specifically stone fruit or fruit, even just fruit that have larger fruit in general, is we want all of the energy of that tree going to establishing a good root system. Because what happens is your tree will change the nutrients slightly that are required from the soil if there's a fruit on the tree. Now, I hate to say it, but you do have to pick off all of them, because if you leave one fruit on the tree is basically thinking, I got fruit. I gotta get those nutrients. And so they're taking up more potassium, they're taking up more phosphorus, they're taking up a lot more silica because they are trying to support that fruit instead of sending out roots. So the first calendar year, I hate to say it, but all of the fruit has to come off. I know that really, really sucks, but just consider it, a sacrifice for the days ahead, and you will be so much happier in the future years because your roots will have established so much better. So the trees that I would do this on, avocados, apples, plums, persimmons, mangoes, any of the ones that have a larger fruit, pawpaws. Now, some fruit trees that are more berries, like mulberries or even jujubes, papayas, because it's not even really a long-term tree anyway. They just produce to produce. I don't pick it off those. Berry bushes, I don't take it off. Nut trees, I don't take it off because they're pretty good on their timing. Mulberries, jujubes, that sort of thing. So no berry bushes do I take off the first fruit, but anything that's like apple, pear, peach, plum, nectarine, avocado, persimmon, yes, year one, take the fruit off, let the energy go to the root system. Number 2, what is the best time of year to harvest moringa for storage? Now, practically for me, I think moringa is kind of an ugly tree. It's long, it's lanky. I don't grow moringa as a full-grown tree. I do one of two things. Either I coppice it, which means if this is the soil, I cut it off like 4 to 6 inches above the soil, coppice it, and I let it grow to be 6 feet tall, coppice. 6 feet tall, coppice. 6 feet tall, coppice. And I can get that way between 4 to 6 harvests per calendar year when I'm doing the coppicing method, because it's so active and it's just, to me, it's an easier way. Now, I do that if I'm feeding it to livestock, if I'm drying it, if I am feeding it to chickens, or if I'm even just using it as chop and drop, because practically the woody stems I don't need from moringa. I would rather have the soft material and then cover it up with a little bit of wood chips and let that soft material sprout. When you do chop and drop with woody stems and you bury them, even with like Mexican sunflower, cold climate like Jerusalem artichoke or honeysuckle, honey locust, you are risking it re-sprouting from the cuttings, which I don't want. I want my chop and drop to be in the soil. So I typically only let it be green. The other way, if you don't want to coppice it because it's a little too ugly, go up about 3 to 4 feet and cut there. So it's like a single stick, sticking out of the ground, and then let that grow to be 8 or 10 feet and then cut it back. 8 or 10 feet, 12 feet, cut it back. The key with that, the goal, is green growth. So you want to, anytime you get green growth and you start noticing, oh, this is really hardening off and getting brown wood or bark, it's probably time to go ahead and cut those back. So right now, I'm getting ready right now to cut my moringas back because they're starting to yellow off. Because in USDA zones 8, 9, and 10A, moringa usually lose their leaves. They're deciduous in the winter, as do mulberries. So why not use that, for growth? So in Florida, will it start to die off for the winter? Yes, they usually do die back. Now, if you're down in Miami, which I know there's some of you down in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, the Keys, it's probably not going to die back, but they do still get lanky. So I still cut them back for harvest. Plus, I do a lot of cooking over the winter. So practically, I want my moringa salt. Like, that's the best way for me to use it. I found drying the moringa and doing it as a powder, it's too much work for me to put it in capsules. I'm too lazy to put it in smoothies. I just forget. And even with my green drink, I just forget, and I don't love the taste of it in my green drink. However, if you mix it 50% moringa powder that's been sifted in a fine sieve with Himalayan sea salt, like 50-50, it helps preserve it and keep it dry, but you also don't taste it. So you use it in baking, use it in cooking exactly the same way you would as regular salt. Use a little bit more because obviously it's 50% moringa and 50% salt, but you don't even taste it. And then you still get the benefits of moringa and you don't have to taste it. You don't even have to think about it. I literally don't even have regular salt on my countertop anymore. I literally just have moringa salt because you just don't taste it. Now I do in certain recipes if I don't want the green color, then I will, like in a creme brulee or something, then I will use regular Himalayan salt or a Celtic sea salt. But really on my countertop for day to day, it's literally just my moringa salt. Question number 3, also regarding moringa. We have a lot of seed pods right now on certain trees that we were waiting to get seed from. About how long do the seed pods stay ready without breaking open completely? So basically, when those seed pods are crunchy and you just barely start to see the cracks, that's when you want to pick them off the tree. So you want them to be crunchy. So just reach up there, grab a couple of them. If they're barely starting to split, cut them off, bring them inside and dry them. I don't leave them in a shed or in the garage unless it's like kind of climate controlled because they can mold, but you might as well pick them off the trees, go ahead and harvest the moringa as long as they're crunchy. If the seed pods still have green on them or they're moist when you squeeze them, leave them on the tree and they'll probably be on there, if they're still kind of greenish now, till probably the 1st or 2nd week of November would be my guess. Question number 4. We have a young mulberry tree that was ravaged by the sheep or goats or whatever. While that is on point, they still love the bark and some of the branches have died. I think the trunk is still intact and new growth is coming at the base. Yay. Should we prune back the dead branches to encourage new growth or wait until winter when it's dormant? So mulberries, you can pretty much prune year round. They're super resilient. They don't need to wait until dormancy to prune them, whether you're in the cold climate zones or warm climate. So you can prune mulberry pretty much whenever you want. Now, if you do the scratch test with your thumb and like scratch the trunk or the bark, and it's still green, it's going to come back. If it's brown, it's down. If it's green, it's good. You know what I mean? So I would say on the mulberries, go ahead and prune them now. Give them some good shape again. And don't forget, if you have a mulberry tree and you're in Southern California, if you're in Texas, Florida, Alabama, Louisiana, those mulberries are starting to look like crap. The leaves look a little diseased. They might look a little bit yellow, and that's okay. Don't worry about it. They're semi-deciduous in the warm climates and they're fully deciduous in the north. So don't worry about spraying them or doing anything at this point. It's a great time to go ahead and prune them and just make cuttings, like lots and lots of cuttings, propagate from cuttings. You know, I'm doing tray after tray after tray of mulberries right now. It's actually a little ridiculous, like hundreds and hundreds. I'm obsessed with mulberries. Question number 5, what happens to the taller Napier grass over the winter? Without a hurricane this year in Florida, again, knock on wood, the Napier grass has grown huge. Can it be cut down all winter long for supplement for livestock feed, or will it die off in the winter on its own? Should we plan to chop and drop before it gets cold? And then there's another 2 follow-up questions from this as well. So Napier grass, I typically don't let it get the hard woody stem. Now, the woody stem will actually look a lot like sugar cane or bamboo. Cows and horses, goats and sheep, they don't love that. So once it gets to be that tall, just strip off the leaves and give it to them. And then you can use those harder stems basically for propagation material. I like to, as soon as I start seeing it getting woody, I chop and drop it and feed it. Or I chop and drop it and use it around fruit trees or around berry bushes. Now, you know, technically you can with cows and with goats, they can digest that woody material. Horses, not so much. Horses, once they eat that harder material, you can risk getting colic. And so I just like to avoid that. I've not seen that with the Napier, but also, you know, I just wouldn't want to risk it. So I would use it for that purpose. Now, if it is a woody stem and it's near a cold sensitive tree. So for example, if I have an avocado right here and my Napier grass is on either side, starting October, November, I'm not going to chop and drop that anymore because I want it to be winter protection for my avocado. So it's kind of a cost benefit analysis of, is it protecting anything, or is it better used as feed or as chop and drop? But by and large, if we get a really cold snap, I'm talking like 25 degrees, Napier will brown up. And it's still good to feed your animals and livestock when it's brown or dried. Totally fine. But you don't have to. And then I always cut it back like January. I cut it way back, like as low as I can to the ground, and I let it come back with like fresh sprouts. Also this year, I will say one thing new that I'm trying, because you can't grow corn in Florida. I mean, I say you can't. It's hard. It's not worth it. I'd rather just go buy it. And so what I'm starting, because I want corn shucks for the fall, for like October, November. So instead of using corn shucks, I'm using Napier grass this year because I've got so much of it. What I'm doing is I cut it back. When I'm letting it get the harder woody stems, I'm just cutting it back and I'm laying it out like on the concrete or on the rocks in the driveway, letting it dry for a week or two, throwing it on the ground so it really dries out and doesn't mold. And I'm gonna bind it up for my corn shucks this year. It's like the Florida cracker, version of corn shucks, in my opinion. So that's my cheater thought on that. So question number 6. For those who are in colder climates, what should we do with our Jerusalem artichokes or sunchokes or fartichokes this time of year? I miss this about Kansas City. I used to have these outside of my kitchen window, which was on like the second story. I had these like 17-foot tall Jerusalem artichokes that would flower right in front of my kitchen window. And I loved it. And what was great is pretty much like Jerusalem artichokes and like asters are like the last ditch effort for honeybees and for the pollinators to get good nectar sources. So I usually leave Jerusalem artichokes until they start dying back. Once we get a first frost, I cut it down, I put them in a small shredder, or just throw them on top of the soil around fruit trees, berry bushes, and I use my Jerusalem artichoke tops for chop and drop. I don't harvest them until like really Thanksgiving, is when I would harvest my Jerusalem artichokes. Now, the fun thing with Jerusalem artichokes, if you think you've harvested all of them, you haven't. There's still some in the soil, and that's going to be your crop for next year. I learned the hard way, never put Jerusalem artichokes in an area where you don't want them forever, because they will always come back. Like, I was trying to get rid of them in a certain spot for, I think, 6 years because I put them in the wrong spot, and you can never get all of them. So just put them in a spot where you're always going to want Jerusalem artichokes or sunchokes pretty much forever. Now, those in USDA zones 9 through 11, you can kind of do sunchokes in zone 9. I've not had really good luck with them, so I skip it. Number 7. What are your thoughts on Mexican sunflower as chop and drop this time of year? How do we decide what to leave and what to cut? This goes back to question 5. My thoughts on Mexican sunflower. I don't let Mexican sunflower get woody at the base, because if it gets woody at the base, it's so long for it to decompose. I don't want to put it through the shredder, a wood chipper. So I typically do it when it's still green. When you start getting those little brown flecks on it, I chop and drop it. I would say 90% of my Mexican sunflower, or feed it to cattle, feed it to goats, feed it to sheep, feed it to horses. Can have it when it's green, not brown. Llamas, what else? Donkeys, they can all have it when it's green. So I chop and drop it. Now, if again, it's by a mango tree, a strawberry tree, an avocado, something that is more cold sensitive, I leave those full on until the end of February, because I want to use that as a wind barricade to really create a microclimate around those trees. I don't touch them. And honestly, I do want some to flower. I don't personally grow Mexican sunflower as a flower option. I use it primarily as chop and drop, because usually for it to flower, it's got to go woody, and that's just not my thing. So that's my thoughts on Mexican sunflower. Okay, question number 8. I planted 2 coffee trees this past April. One is thriving and the other is alive, but smaller. It's always looked a little sad. I'm wondering if I can transplant it to another location, maybe closer to the thriving plant. I'm not sure if this is the wild coffee, the native in Florida, or if this is the Arabica coffee. I would say either way, if it's been in the ground less than a year, generally speaking, you're going to be pretty safe. Most people in USDA zones 9 and 10A are growing coffee in a greenhouse setting. Outside in 10A through 11 and 12 is totally fine. So practically, I would say you're okay to go ahead and move it. But when you lift it, if it's been in the ground a year, maybe consider doing it over the course of a couple weeks. So dig like a quarter of the way around, then another quarter of the way around, wait for a week and then dig another quarter. So really over a couple weeks, you're kind of severing those roots around the base. And I think that will ease the transplant shock a little bit. And then what I would do is just sprinkle some rooting hormone on it before you put it in the ground. Water, 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 water. Make sure you got lots of wood chips around the base, and I think you're going to be fine. Obviously, also check for root knot nematodes because that really is a thing. Question number 9. What is the best way that you found to prevent larvae in guava, specifically Ruby Supreme? I prefer bagging over chemicals if possible. If bagging, when is the best time? Now, when I was in Central America, the phrase that we always heard about guavas is you always eat guavas in the dark or with your eyes closed. Because guavas are just going to have worms in them. They're just going to. Now, they're not the type of worms that are going to like infest your body and like be a parasite. Just consider it free protein, I guess. There's no flavor to them. Now, Ruby Supreme is far more resistant to the larva than other varieties. The white or pink Barbie, those are a little more susceptible to those larvae. But generally speaking, once the fruit is probably the size of like a ping pong ball, that's when I put a silk bag on it and put the bag over the top. Now, I've done it less and less over the years because I just don't care. And I'll be honest, I just eat them regardless if there's little worms in them. Now, if there's a lot in there and they're like squirming, I'm not eating them. But generally speaking, I just close my eyes and I just eat them. So bagging is usually the best way. Definitely don't use the colored silk bags, and don't use just the cheap ones from the grocery, from like the dollar store. Make sure you get fruit to the little nylon bags so you're not going to be leaching dyes or chemicals into your fruit as well. That's my thought. Number 10, should we cut back banana leaves this time of year to clean them up for the winter? Fantastic question. No. Please don't. So this time of year, October, November, December, January, February, even the 1st of March, no pruning bananas. All the ugly, all the dead, all the yellow, it gets to stay. The reason why is that is your insulation. It's insulating the trunk. It's insulating the base and the corm. It's insulating the leaves and protecting any of the fruit. So just leave it. I know it's ugly, but that is your insulation. That's just what it is, you know, so just leave it this time of year. It's also October onward. We're not fertilizing bananas anymore. There's no more compost. There's no more foliar sprays. I don't want them producing fruit this time of year. Generally speaking, if you get a flower in October, it's probably going to get frosted. If you're in zones 9A, 9B, even 10A. Now, if you're 10B, 11, or 12, you know, you can let your bananas fruit whenever you want. But in our colder tropical climates, our subtropical, no more cutting. Bananas just stay. There's no more foliar sprays. There's no more composting. So we want our bananas to stay in stasis. The only thing I'm doing with bananas this time of year is like hay or straw. I'm just piling it around the base of it because that's a slower decomposition, or you're using wood chips. But I'm not fertilizing, no compost whatsoever this time of year. Number 11, if a stone fruit has suckers coming up from the bottom, when should I prune them? Yesterday. Anytime you see suckers coming up from the bottom, regardless of what time of year it is, cut them off as soon as possible if it's below the graft. All it's doing is sucking energy from your tree. That's literally all that it's doing. And that's actually true, not just stone fruit like peach, pear, plum, nectarine, apple. It's also true on things like citrus or avocado. Like, you don't need the rootstock. So if you see that sprout coming up from the graft, I don't care what time of year it is. If it's below the graft, cut it off, be done with it. Don't let it suck the energy from your tree. And don't use the sealant paste or the sealant paint. That's so stupid. That's a gimmick, basically from tree companies, that they want to paint the wound. It doesn't do anything. In fact, it does more harm than good, because what happens is you have that fresh wound that is moist, and when you paint over the top of it, you're trapping that moisture inside, which is a recipe for bacteria or fungal issues. You want that wound to dry out. It's just like a wound. If you scrape your knee or whatever, for a human, you want it to dry out. You don't want moisture on that wound all the time. You don't want to leave a Band-Aid on it forever. No, you want to open it up, let it dry out. That's how our skin or the tree actually heals itself. Now, when do you prune the rest of the trees? Stone fruit trees, I wait until full-on dormancy, December or early January. So I know it's hard in December, so if you have to do it after Thanksgiving, like Thanksgiving, great. But I try to do December or very early January is when I prune, because I want to do it when the sap is not flowing and moving. Now, if you have things like avocado, pretty much the month after it's done fruiting, go ahead and prune it. Mango the same way. This is like peak mango pruning season is right now. So mangoes are done fruiting. I would go ahead and start cutting and pruning and shaping your tree. If you were to like hover on the top of your mango tree, and if you can't see all the way down to the base of the tree, you want that full airflow, you did it wrong. You want good airflow up the center of the canopy of your fruit trees. So number 12, and this is our last question for the month. I'm not sure what growing zone this is, so I'll do this for both areas. Number 12 is, if we didn't fertilize in September, can we sneak it in this month? Now, if you're in USDA zones 3 through 8, the only thing I would be doing this month is Epsom salts, azomite. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Epsom salts or azomite, because those mineral-based are going to help establish a healthy root system. They're not going to spark new growth. And that's all you want to do, is you want them to be put to bed for the winter. So azomite, high silica, or Epsom salts, magnesium sulfate, and that's pretty much it in the cold climate zones. You're not doing any more compost, no more fertilizing in the cold zones. In the warmer climate zones, you can do azomite, you can do the Epsom salts, you can do a light compost if you want, and foliar sprays. But I would not do any more fertilizing. You might be able to do like a green sand. Biochar is great this time of year. But really, if you missed your September window, you don't want to spark new growth on those fruit trees and berry bushes. So I would probably just wait until spring. Now, it's a great time of year in 9 to 11. Again, do your foliar sprays, light fish emulsion, sea kelp, seaweed, do compost teas, vermicompost liquid. All of that stuff is great this time of year. Soil drenches with probiotics, fan-freaking-tastic for the food forest this time of year. So if you didn't do it in September in those warmer zones, you can still do a little bit, but we're not using bone meal this time of year. We're not using blood meal. We're not doing any organic fertilizers. Like I like Tree Tone by Espoma Organics. So we're not doing any of that. We're done. So if you missed your window, sorry, bubs. You should have watched last month's huddle, and then you would have been reminded. So I think that's pretty much it for the questions this month. So hopefully there were some tidbits and some gold nuggets in there that you can add to your tool belt. If you want a deeper dive, or if you're looking to take permaculture classes, I know some of you have asked, am I going to be doing a permaculture design course this year? Probably not before the end of the year. But I'll be honest with you, the Patreon group, there's like 30 plus classes that are over an hour long. It's like a PDC at your own pace. You know, it's like, I mean, there's a lot of classes and deep information there. So if you want to take a permaculture design course and you want to go deep, do that at your own pace. There's a free 7-day trial for an all access pass. So you can literally have access to everything. Binge watch, download the PDFs, watch the exclusive content on there, and just go to town, do a 7-day mini PDC intro to see if doing a design course is right for you. So I would say just give it a shot. So otherwise, continue to follow on social media. I would so appreciate it if you would do the social media thing. Share this in maybe some gardening groups on Facebook, or share the reels or whatever on Instagram or on TikTok. It all just helps get the information into the hands of the people that appreciate it and will be able to use it the most. And then also, if you're a podcaster, look up Obsessed with Plants. So there's a new podcast that David and I started. There's 2 episodes out now, another one that's going to be coming out here pretty soon, and then a third one that I'm super excited because we have Chris and Christy Liebner from Wild Food Co. where we're going to dive into native plants and some of our absolute favorite native plant selections. So hopefully this was helpful to you. As always, have fun, and I will see you in the garden.